Hello everyone and welcome to my Mists of Pandaria Death Knight leveling guide, where I will compare the different specializations at different levels, show my talent trees and also what glyphs I prefer to use. The benefit of choosing blood is that you're doing a lot of single target but also AoE damage. At the same time, if you like to dungeon farm, then as a tank you usually have next to instant Qs. Whereas Frost and Unholy, you are of course also doing a decent amount of single and AoE damage, but the downside is that you're not as tanky, so you won't be able to solo as many quests, and there will also be more downtime where you need to regen health. No matter what specialization I'm playing, then this is usually how my talent tree will look like. And now an explanation. At level 56 we can choose Unholy Blight. The reason why I dislike this is because of the long cooldown. And don't forget we also have other ways to spread our diseases, so why choose a talent like this? Plague Leech is way better, a low cooldown where you're instantly restoring 2 death runes, so you can use this on whatever ability you would like. However, I feel like Rolling Blood is way better as I'm using Blood Bottle quite often and I just need to use this on one target with diseases and it will be spread to nearby enemies. I mainly choose Lichborn as my level 57 talent as I can now use Death Coil to heal myself. Just be aware that you can only do this for 10 seconds. But it provides a ton of healing, which is absolutely insane. The reason why I dislike Anti-Magic Zone is because you're not fighting casters that often, and when you are, then they don't usually get to cast on you because of your interrupt and other ways to prevent spell damage. I also dislike the third option, as you only have a 3 seconds window to be healed for a high amount, else you will end up dying anyway. The reason why I like Death's Advance is mainly because of the passive 10% increased movement speed, so you can run faster when you need to kite or get to the next enemy. But the activate is also insane for more movement speed and not being able to be slowed below 100% of your normal movement speed for 6 seconds. In my opinion, Chillblains is mainly a PvP talent and it's not really worth picking as you won't be using Change of Eyes as often and you don't really need to kite as well. I mean, you should be fine being in close combat most of the time. The last option isn't really bad. A 5-second stun with a low cooldown is absolutely amazing when you're just fighting one target, but be aware it will also replace your Strangulate, so you're silenced against casters. And because we are often fighting many targets at the same time, then the spell is not really that useful, at least not if we compare it to Death's Advance. At level 60 we can choose Death Pack at 2 minutes cooldown, but it's also healing you for 50% of your maximum health. The second option is definitely not bad either, as it's doing a lot of damage, but also healing you. The downside is that it's requiring a death rune, but there's no cooldown. So this is also a talent I usually pick, but it all depends on the different fights. I don't like the last option, as it's not an instant heal, and it also requires a lot of runic power to be healing you for a high amount. And when you activate this, you will therefore not have more runic power to do damage or be able to heal yourself with Lichborn and Death Coils. All 3 talents at level 75 are decent options. The first one here, where your Death Coil, Frost Strike and Rune Strike have a 45% chance to increase your rune regeneration by 100% for 2.5 seconds. Another option is to make the same spells have a 45% chance to activate a random fully depleted rune. For those of you who would much rather like to time when you're getting your death runes, go for Blood Tap like I do. When you're using the very same spells, you're being generated 2 blood charges, and you can have a total of 12 of these. In other words, you can store 2 death runes for whenever you would like these, and then you could always use 2 more Death Coils, Frost Strikes or Rune Strikes and have enough blood charges to activate yet another death rune. So what glyphs do I like to use? The first one here is an absolute must-have. When you're slaying an enemy, you can swap into Unholy Presence or Frost Presence and use a free Death Strike. In other words, you will have next to no downtime as you won't need to use food or bandages as often. And don't forget this one, whenever you kill an enemy, the cooldown of your Death Grip will also be reset so you can grab yet another one. This allows you to also spend next to no time going between the different creatures. Anti-Magic Shell can be quite good, but it all depends on your specialization and also how often you're fighting casters. If you need more ways to kite, you could also go for Death and Decay, as all enemies within the circle will now also have their movement speed reduced by 50%. For minor glyphs, I reduced the cast time of my death gate by 60%. I will be able to fall for a greater distance without suffering damage when I use my Path of Frost, and whenever my death grip fails because the target is immune, the cooldown will also be reset. Next up, I will compare the different specializations at different levels to figure out what will be the best and most efficient to level as. Once you have finished your storyline, you will be moving into Outland, and here I'm testing the Frost specialization, AoE damage, but also single target wise. When it comes to AoE, I'm not really doing that great, and my survivability isn't really great either, so I don't really like this specialization so far. When it comes to single target damage, you are doing better, but if you're for example fighting an elite or two, you're going to be in big trouble because you don't have a lot of survivability or self-healing. Therefore, I'm also usually not leveling as Frost in Burning Crusade content. But what about the other DPS specialization, Unholy? Is it doing any better? When we are looking at the damage done single target wise, it's definitely not bad. I can easily kill a target and move on, pretty much without ever having to pay attention to my health bar. A big benefit as Unholy is that you can control your pet way better, it's doing way more damage and not just lasting for 1 minute. Therefore, it's also important to keep it alive, else you'll be doing way less damage. At the same time, Frost and Unholy has a common problem, and this is not just our self-healing, but also the opportunity to be dealing with many spellcasters at the same time. We're simply taking way too much damage, and this can therefore also be quite deadly. For those specific reasons, I'm always leveling as Blood during Burning Crusade content. I can pull way more enemies, I don't really have to pay attention to my health, and my damage is just absolutely insane. Yeah, it is just the best specialization in my opinion. Here I'm also fighting an elite pretty close to my own level, and because of the insane self-healing, I'm able to take this down. If I were leveling as Frost and Unholy, I would definitely have to find a group. In other words, since I'm able to do something like this, you can also imagine how easy it is for me to kill a non-elite, or well, 5 or 10 non-elites at the same time. What about when we're moving into Wrath of the Lich King content? Is Unholy and Frost becoming better? Yeah, better than they were in Burning Crusade content, as we're getting new spells and also amazing passives. However, they're still not anywhere close to be competing with the Blood Death Knight. This is mainly due to them still having the best damage, and at the same time also new cooldowns you can activate when you're dropping low, or well, just to stay high health most of the time. Therefore, you can now also head into dungeons and solo some of these, as you can pull 3 and up to 6 elites at the very same time, and there's no way an Unholy or Frost can outlevel something like this. And why? It's probably not a surprise that I'm always sticking to this specialization in Wrath of the Lich King and also in Cataclysm content. But what about when we reach level 85 or higher and we need to level in Mists of Pandaria? Things are finally changing. In this footage, I'm leveling as Unholy, and single target wise, it's not bad. I'm not really struggling with health, just like I have never really done, at least not single target wise. But my pet are still doing pretty good damage, and I'm having so many things I can activate to just continue going on and on. But what about AoE damage, or well, dealing with multiple targets at the same time? Has it got better? As long as these are not casters, I should not be struggling, and finally I can pull more than 5 enemies and actually take those down without dying. I will of course need to pay attention to my health and use cooldowns during such a big pull, but then I can always get back to killing 1 or 2 enemies at the same time until my cooldowns are ready. Why I also like to level as Unholy, and this is mainly for those of you who would like to DPS at max level. Unholy are doing so good in phase 1 and 2. Yeah, in some cases actually better than Frost. So if you would like to DPS at max level, then it is a good decision to be leveling from 85 to 90 as Unholy and learn about the different spells, rotations, and also how you should be doing max DPS, so you're ready to start dungeon farming and later on raid as Unholy. So are you telling me Frost are not great for leveling? Well, single target wise, I would say they're doing better than the Unholy Death Knight, but when it comes to comparing the AoE damage, or well, survivability and doing a lot of AoE damage to many targets at the same time, it just seems like they're not performing as great. So this is mainly just for killing 1 or 2 targets at the same time. How about the Blood Death Knight? Are they still the best levelers like they were from Burning Crusade and into Cataclysm zones? Sadly, when we're looking at single target damage, they're actually not doing that great. At least this is my opinion, but I just feel like you have way more things to be pressing as Frost and Unholy, and therefore also constant damage. When your single target damage isn't great, you are also forced to be doing huge AoE pulls to be leveling efficiently. Don't worry, it is a possibility to constantly do this as long as there's not too much competition, because you always have cooldowns you can activate, where the other 2 specializations will be using every single cooldown when they're doing a pull like this. When you were leveling in Burning Crusade and up to Cataclysm content, it were also efficient just to dungeon farm. This is not a strategy I recommend you from 85 to 90, because there's many things you would like to unlock through questing, for example, upcoming daily quest, rare rewards, and also a ton of reputation that will be important in the beginning for upcoming epic items. So what is the best specialization to choose for your Mists of Pandaria leveling? Choose what looks the most fun, but always have in mind what you will be playing at max level, and then maybe level as that specialization so you're used to everything without having to learn all of this when you reach max level. So I wish you an amazing leveling journey. And if you would like the best Mists of Pandaria leveling guide, then I would also recommend you to check out the description below this video, where there will be a redirect link to where you can download and test out the guide. If you're interested in more Mists of Pandaria videos, make sure to check out my channel, and soon I'll also publish a lot more videos.